What's up, everybody? It's your boy, the Bard, back to you with another video for the Hardcore Casuals gaming channel. And today we're doing something a little different. We are watching Jason Schreier. Jason Schreier is a reporter for Bloomberg, and he knows a lot more about the game industry than I do because he actually has like real connections. And today he's gone into detail on his channel about how things got so bad at Xbox. I will put the link down for this video down below because I think it is very interesting. He has a lot of other videos on his channel. Not a lot, but he's been posting a lot more. I think is very insightful and is very interesting about today's gaming atmosphere. We got, for real reason, E3 died, Final Fantasy 7, Beat of the Hollower, Destiny. I think he's a very insightful person, and yeah, he's a reporter for Bloomberg News, co-host of the Triple Click podcast, author. He knows his stuff. And let's watch what he has to say about Xbox.
Xbox, which is
My bad.
about to hit the reset button. As I reported on Bloomberg last week, massive layoffs are coming to Xbox after the end of Microsoft's fiscal year on June 30th. And as a
Yeah, June 30th. Every year. This isn't very new. I'm not gonna try to pause too much while he's talking, but yeah, they had layoffs last year, and if you don't know, into the news right now, there's talk of Xbox closing various other studios, such as off the top of my head, Ninja Theory, uh Double Fine, and Compulsion Games. This is where we're at right now in the industry, which is very sad in my opinion. Yeah, go back.
I reported on Bloomberg this week, studios such as Compulsion, the maker of South of Midnight, and
Yeah.
Double Fine, the maker of Kiln and Keeper, and Ninja Theory, the maker of Hellblade, are all currently in negotiations with Xbox to figure out what happens next, because all of them are on the chopping block. And those are just the three that I've confirmed so far. I know that there are other studios in trouble. I know that layoffs are about to hit the entire organization in a huge way. Full picture isn't clear yet. We'll find out a little bit more in the days and weeks to come. But I wanted to talk a little bit about how we got here. In 13 years, Xbox has gone from competing with PlayStation for console supremacy to hiring a new CEO who's like saying publicly about how troubled talking publicly about how troubled the business is, and writing memos that include lines like, quote, "This cannot continue." I think it's worth noting before
For those that don't remember, earlier this year, Phil Spencer, the head of Xbox, did get replaced by Asha Sharma. I'm sure you already knew that. But in case you know, in case someone clicked on this and didn't, just know that Xbox is under new management.
we start getting into the history, that Microsoft is a complicated organization with a lot of different branches, and within Xbox you have a lot of these different tentpoles. You have hardware, you have software, you have services, and those are all three different businesses with kind of competing models, and sometimes they're at odds with one another. What's good for the Xbox as a platform might not necessarily be good for Xbox games and the studios that are making them. This is true of a lot of companies, but it's even more pronounced at Microsoft, where people are incentivized to stay in their jobs for as long as possible and to make sure that they are seen as doing a good job and make sure they do not rock the boat, because much of their compensation, which is very good at Microsoft, is stock. And what happens at Microsoft is that their stock vests over time. They get new tranches over time, and each of it is kind of like vesting over a certain period. And so to get their full comp, they need to stick around. There's this kind of infamous program that they have called 55 and 15, which is basically, if you've been there for 15 years and you are age 55 or older, you can retire, and then all of your stock will vest as a result. And so essentially, again, more incentive to just stick around at the company to keep your job. So just keep that in the back of your head as we kind of go through the Xbox story. All right. So how did we get here? Let's go back to 2013. So this is the end of the Xbox 360 era. The Xbox 360 is up there with the PlayStation 3, duking it out for number one. I
I think this is a great place that he's probably going to start here because this is honestly where the decline in Xbox, in my opinion, for starts for sure. Because I'm
believe the
sure he'll
360 is
explain.
number one at one point. I don't remember. I think they're both kind of like neck and neck towards the end in terms of hardware sales. I believe the PS3 might have slightly inched out the 360 by the end of things, but essentially they were on par at that point. And the Xbox, I mean, a lot of people associate it with big hits like Halo and Gears and Forza, but it also really innovated and brought to the games industry this idea of indie games that weren't just kind of like these random garage hits that you or garage creations that you might find on your PC if you know the right file share programs to look for, but also these legitimate potential hits like Braid and Limbo and Super Meat Boy and even Minecraft.
Limbo is fantastic. Minecraft, no, there's nothing you can say about Minecraft. It's just a constant.
All of those games became hits in part or mostly because they were on Xbox's Xbox Live Arcade program, which allowed some of these indie games not just to be distributed to Xbox console owners, but also gave them promotion on the Xbox UI and really helped these people just kind of stand out. They got support from an internal organization within Xbox, ID at Xbox, and so worth noting here that like without Xbox in this generation, indie games would not be quite what they are today. Um,
That
then
definitely goes
2015
under the
was
radar
born,
for
and we have
sure.
the Xbox One debacle under Don Matrick, who is running the org. The idea of the Xbox One, the next console, was not just to be a gaming platform, but also an all-in-one entertainment machine. The messaging in their announcement in May 2013 is completely incoherent and inconsistent. You have executives contradicting each other in interviews because nobody really knows what's going on. It's bundled with
And before I continue with this video anymore, I just want to preface that yes, I did buy an Xbox One before a PS4, but
Connect. It's online
we did
only.
get a PS4 later, which
Nobody's really
ultimately brought
clear
me back into
exactly how
gaming,
that
though.
works. You have to plug it into. Do you have to connect it to an internet connection every once in a while, every 24 hours, or all the time, or what does that look like? It's not clear. But one thing is clear: people hate it. People revolt. At this point, I think it's worth noting today the idea of an online only console is more palatable. I think more people are kind of accustomed to that notion, but back then that was not the case. People did not have quite the same internet infrastructure that they do today, and this idea of not being able to own your own games, which was a huge part of it. A huge part of this, by the way, a little bit of quick context here is that at this point, used games were seen as the boogeyman for the video game industry, and a lot of game companies wanted to go to digital. They wanted to find ways to make it so you couldn't just buy a game and then trade it back into GameStop and allow GameStop to sell your used game to other people. This was seen as a big problem for gaming back then. Anyway, so Xbox One is
Still kind
announced
of
as a
is.
debacle. About 1 or 2 months after 2 months, I believe it was July of 2013, they reverse course on the online only thing and say, actually, we're going to make this so you can play it offline. Don't worry about the online stuff. Eventually, they get rid of Don Matrick during this period, but it's kind of too late to recover. And one of the biggest problems is still intact, which is that the Xbox One is still sold with the Kinect bundled in. The Kinect, for people to remember, is the kind of the body motion sensing device that Microsoft used to manufacture and had its pros and cons.
Yeah, and meanwhile, Xbox is fucking putting all like going all in on this all in entertainment in this all in entertainment encompassing thing. You just got PlayStation on the other side that focus just on the games, and we'll see.
And so as a result
And
of that, the
future
Xbox One was sold for
tells us what
$500,
happened.
whereas the competing PlayStation 4, which came out around the same time, November of 2013, was sold for $400. With that, the console war was essentially over.
$400 consoles, crazy in 2026.
The next year, they wind up detaching the Kinect and selling the Xbox One for $400 to try to compete, but a little bit too little, too late. So Phil Spencer takes over. Phil Spencer takes over in 2014. He's a Microsoft lifer, been there for like his entire life. It was the only job he had was being at Microsoft, and he is kind of seen as he's well liked, he's gregarious, he's amicable, and he is seen as someone with a vision for what Xbox could look like 1 year, 5 years, 10 years down the road. One of his first big bets in the 2 or 3 years after he takes over is this initiative called Xbox Game Pass that they see as their version of Netflix for gaming. And Phil Spencer, I think, pretty wisely recognizes that as production costs keep going up, the volatility of the games industry just keeps increasing. And so you need to sell more and more copies to get a hit. This is becoming a problem for Microsoft. And so why not take after the software initiatives within the org and get people on a subscription, get a stable source of recurring revenue, get people paying $10 a month, and just continuing to do so. This is also a time when, like Netflix, we're seeing the rise of streaming services in film and TV. So it seems like a viable business model.
Yeah, Phil. What I really like about Phil Spencer's initiative, and I don't care what anyone says, the campaign of what is in Xbox and putting all your games on everything, I think is the ultimate way to go. I think Phil Spencer, under his vision, was ultimately to get the games to the consumer and not the consumer go to the game console. Which for Microsoft and Xbox, I'm sure he'll go into more detail about how that's problematic for a console manufacturer
And Phil Spencer sees this as the
when
kind
you
of
want to sell
North Star
consoles,
for
obviously.
Xbox at this point. Game Pass launches in 2017. Soon it's getting day one versions of every Xbox game. Around the same time, quick kind of side note here, with Xbox One sales struggling, Spencer decides to put all of their games on PC, which is essentially the end of Xbox exclusivity, which I think that people kind of point to the recent initiatives of PlayStation being on PlayStation. And
Except where is Rare Replay, Xbox? Nah. That's the only thing. That's the only thing I want. Where is Rare Replay?
Switch is like, oh, Xbox
How is
isn't
Banjo-Kazooie
exclusive
not on
anymore. But
PC?
really, this is it. Because if you can get Xbox games on PC, that means that if you are a PC user, and there are many millions of them out there, you have very little reason to buy an Xbox. More on that stuff in a bit, but let's get back to Game Pass. For Game Pass to work, it needs a lot of games, and Spencer and the Xbox org wind up paying a lot of developers to put their games on Game Pass, and those deals wind up helping a lot of developers. A lot of developers stay solvent over the years, but it's not enough, and Spencer wants a way bigger back catalog, and just he wants hundreds of games on there, because the only way for a Netflix of gaming to work is to have a huge catalog of software out there. So he goes on a shopping spree. And that is in part buoyed by the success of the big 2014 acquisition that Xbox made, which was Minecraft and Mojang, which is for $2.5 billion and worked incredibly well. I mean, Minecraft is still, to this day, many years later, it's still one of the biggest games.
How do you have Minecraft
world.
and COD if you're fumbling the bag?
2018, 2019 era, he buys Double Fine and Compulsion and Obsidian and Exile and Ninja Theory and a whole bunch more. Playground. And then in 2020, Xbox buys ZeniMax, the company behind.
Before the ZeniMax thing, but what she's about to go into, you keep these studios in mind. Compulsion Games and X-File, Playground, all these guys. Where Rare, I mean, they've already had Rare, but all these smaller developers to help pad out the idea of Game Pass, because it's the biggest complaint is they were known as the Forza, Gears, and Halo studio. Those are your home run hits that you want to bet on when you're Xbox, and these guys, not every batter to bring it to baseball. You want these guys to hit you double, singles, and triples just to bring in some people. Try to get these more niche games into the ecosystem. So eventually, when you do have your big temple titles, those are the ones that are hopefully going to wow and invest into the Xbox. Obviously, that's not the way things went down.
And Bethesda for $7.5 billion, which
and
gives
then they bought
them
Bethesda.
access to franchises like Fallout and Elder Scrolls and Doom.
So now they have the
takes
IP.
This massive third-party publisher and puts them into the Xbox umbrella. And one of their first things that they say is like, "Hey, we're gonna put all these games. They're gonna be they're all gonna be day one on Game Pass. They're all gonna be part of our just kind of broad strategy. We're gonna put them on Xbox and PC." Part of the arrangement behind all of these acquisitions is that these studios get to keep their autonomy. ZeniMax becomes its own entity, or stays its own entity, still reporting to its CEO, Jamie Leader, while studios like Double Fine and
Yeah, like we see the talent in these studios. We're not gonna fuck with that. So hopefully y'all can make games for us for the brand of
Obsidian
Xbox.
turn into what's called limited integration studios. They're told, make great games, take risks, try to win awards. It's okay if a game isn't a huge hit because it can still be useful to Xbox as part of this broad strategy to get games on Game Pass. So Double Fine might be a perfect example of that. This is an independent studio in San Francisco that has been around for many, many years. It's one that you might know well if you've watched the Double Fine documentary series.
Tim Schafer, the GOAT.
Including Psychodicy about the making of Psychonauts 2, which once again, I will say I cannot recommend enough if you want to understand how games are made and get a little glimpse behind the curtain into the messy.
Is that on YouTube? Curious. What's it called? Psycho Double Fine documentary. Let me check. Let me check it away. How long is it? You know? Now get that shit out of here. Psych Odyssey? How many episodes we got here? About 6 episodes, about half hour, 20 minutes. Maybe one day we'll react to that one. If y'all like that, let me know.
Development process, so please go watch that. But yeah, so these guys, I mean, Double Fine is an example of a studio that like has kind of survived but never really had a huge hit. It's not the type of studio you buy if you want extreme profitability, if you want Call of Duty level numbers. We'll get to that. So that's not the mandate. The mandate is like, you can be successful at the studio as long as you are making a game that contributes to the overall value of Game Pass, which is our main mission. At the end of 2020, around the same period, Xbox launches the Xbox Series X and Series S. One is more powerful, one is more affordable, and the idea is hopefully get back in the hardware race after really losing this Xbox One generation. Because at this point, Xbox hardware sales have truly kind of fallen off a cliff. The PlayStation.
And a big problem with the Xbox One ecosystem and why Xbox continued to struggle. Phil Spencer has said on record that this was the biggest generation. Like, this is the biggest fuck up of a generation they could have had, because this was the rise of digital games. This is where everyone had their digital libraries with them. They're comfortable in their ecosystem. So everyone was finding, do they want to invest into a PS4 or an Xbox One? This is where I'm buying my digital games, because hopefully the mindset we all have when we're buying these digital games is they're going to carry with me into the next console, so I don't have to just keep buying the same games over and over and over again. So after this generation, obviously a lot of people, I don't remember the exact numbers, but the PlayStation 4 broke fucking records. Like, they have massive success. Xbox like absolutely dog smacked the Xbox One, and
is outselling it 2 to 1.
That was honestly the precipice of where we are.
Don't know the real numbers because things have gotten so bad that Microsoft decided to stop reporting Xbox sales numbers, Xbox hardware sales numbers, which
so we didn't even know the Xbox sales
industry is that if you've sold well, if you're doing well, you share numbers. If a game does not share sales numbers, chances are it is not delivering the expectations that people were hoping for. But one of the problems of the Xbox Series, other than just kind of losing a lot of people to PlayStation over the last generation, one of the problems is that it doesn't have a killer app, because the new Halo game, Halo Infinite, which was planned for launch, is delayed to fall 2021. It is having all sorts of development issues. That's a story for another day. And man, I talked about budgets on a previous video. Maybe one day I'll talk.
The budget video is honestly a must watch. I'm gonna link that one down below too.
A little bit about Halo Infinite and its challenges and its budget. The budget behind that game is I think larger than most people would ever even guess. that game winds up coming out in fall of 2021, and I think has a kind of strong start, but like ultimately winds up disappointing players. Again, story for another time. So it's 2021. Xbox.
Yeah, part of the story of that will probably entail that they just were not equipped to make Halo into a live service game, which because I mean I for one remember playing Halo Infinite online multiplayer and had a great time for the first week or two, but yeah, I just got bored with it, bro. It's just like, okay, I played it. I played that fun time, move on to the next thing. It did never enticed me with like its progression system. I thought the progression system was not good. Uh yeah, yeah. I hope he talks about that one day. That'd be a cool story.
Hardware sales are not where they need to be. It's initiatives like cloud, which is the idea that like you could stream a game to a device and play it using Microsoft's servers, and so you don't need to buy an expensive piece of hardware to play it. That initiative has not really taken off in a big way. Game Pass has done fairly well, but subscriptions have kind of plateaued. There isn't a ton of growth in it. COVID has led to a lot of big gaming growth. Interest rates are at zero, a lot of crazy acquisitions going on, and Phil Spencer takes a big swing. Activision Blizzard at this point is facing a lot of turmoil. It's dealing with misconduct lawsuits and a lot of exposés written about it. And Phil Spencer decides to buy it for nearly $70 billion, the equivalent of 28 Minecrafts, in a deal that is announced in January of
28 Minecrafts is kind of
2022.
wild.
So there are a few reasons that this deal makes sense from Xbox's perspective. Call of Duty is one of the biggest franchises in the world, and it could be a huge growth driver for Game Pass. You get the new Call of Duty as day one on Game Pass every year. You get a lot of people subscribing to Game Pass for that. Blizzard isn't quite what it used to be. You can read that story in Play Nice,
Great book.
the book that I published a couple of years ago. But it still has killer franchises: Diablo, Overwatch, and World of Warcraft was and remains a guaranteed moneymaker. So that's always a good investment. Activision Blizzard also owns King, the makers of Candy Crush, which gives Xbox a presence on mobile that it never had before. I think Xbox is looking at mobile as a growth opportunity at this point. Mobile is a really tough market to get into and to find success in, but Candy Crush is one of the games that has found success over the years. So that's a good investment. Now, I won't get into all the nitty gritty of the regulatory process, but essentially it was a very messy battle that wound up taking 18 months to close. The deal was announced in January of 2022, and it didn't close until October of 2023. And during that period of time, the climate changed quite a bit. All of that COVID growth went away and started sputtering, and it became clear that the video game industry was not going to see double-digit growth again. Roblox started exploding. A lot of other service initiatives did not fail. AI began to take over. ChatGPT launched in that same around this time that
Really?
Activision,
I didn't know
the
that.
Activision deal closed and became this sensation, this kind of cultural phenomenon. And companies, including Microsoft, were looking over and saying, how about this AI thing? And I wonder, after that 18-month messy process that really led to a lot of problems, I wonder how many people at Xbox were still thrilled about that particular acquisition. Because around then is when Microsoft began to issue a new mandate to Xbox. Microsoft, its CEO, its CFO, they began to put on a little bit more pressure than there had been on Xbox before. Suddenly, it became all about profitability. Because Microsoft is looking over, and between the $69 billion acquisition, a lack of Game Pass growth, and this newfound focus that Microsoft wants to have on AI, they say, hey, we want to see a bit more of a return on this massive investment that we made into Xbox. And by the way, I think that like 69 billion is a huge number. $69 billion is an incredible amount of money that Xbox wound up paying for Activision Blizzard. But that's just the start. like the actual number that you are paying is so much bigger than you could even imagine, because in addition to what you're paying for the acquisition itself,
You gotta pay
like
for more
closing costs and
games.
regulatory like lawyer costs for the regulatory battles that come with it, you are also bringing in thousands, 10,000 new employees who all need to be paid and managed, and you need managers within the Xbox org to spend their time.
Like, I feel like a big problem that we're now facing nowadays is, look at this big behemoth they've created, but like they never gotten their shit together. There's been problems since 2013. Now we're like, you're just adding more games, more studios isn't fixing the problem. It's not well managed.
Watching over that org. And suddenly your entire organization is way more expensive than it was a
Like,
year
what
ago,
can we
and
compare
those
this to?
costs are
Like,
not going
nothing in the
away. They
games
are
industry is able
continuing.
to be
So you got to
made
consider
like
that
this
as well. If you want to know more
authentically.
about burn rates and why these game companies cost so much to operate, check out my previous video about why games cost so much to make.
I'll just like this whole channel, low
Basic
key.
rule of thumb is that it used to be about $10,000 per employee per month. That number has gone up. I think it's closer these days, especially in expensive cities, to 15,000, maybe even 20,000, somewhere between those two. And that number is not just salary; it also includes overhead and costs associated with employees. You can kind of fold rent into there, office rent into there, benefits. Here in the U.S., employers have to pay a lot of money for health insurance and other benefits.
Quick side note: if y'all wrote a book, would you have two books back there, or just one? It's a little weird, just two. But if I wrote a good book, I would do it
It's
too. I
including
get it.
401k matching and other things that employees like to have and deserve to have. So huge burn rate that is coming along with that $69 billion acquisition cost. And so that around then, around the time of that acquisition and suddenly the push for profitability, that's when we start to see things getting really bad. Xbox has 4 mass layoffs in 2 years. We see the shutdowns, the closures of studios under the Xbox umbrella, like Arcane Austin and Tango Gameworks, which wound up going to Crafton, which saved that studio. We see cancellations of big, expensive projects like Perfect Dark and Everwild and Blackbird, which is the code name that I reported at Bloomberg for the project that ZeniMax Online Studios was working on. They made Elder Scrolls Online, and they were working on this Blackbird thing, which, by the way, so I've seen footage of that game. It's pretty cool, and it's an online shooter. Destiny just died. And if Xbox had a game like Blackbird ready to go to kind of fill that void that Destiny has left, man, that could have been a hit. I've heard nothing but good things about that game. Some of the people who are that game, granted, big, very expensive project, spent a lot of time in development, was having struggles of its own, but everything I've heard about that game is so positive that it's really a shame that it was canceled, I think, because I think it could have helped fill a much needed gap for Xbox.
We do
now.
have a
But
gap
anyway,
for
so
that now.
more pressure.
Is everyone going to go play
This is
Warframe,
around the time
or
that Xbox in the
I
beginning
was
of
kidding.
2024 starts dabbling with Switch and PlayStation? Soon it's putting everything on multiple consoles as it tries to fix its P&Ls. Becomes much harder to get straight answers if you're working at one of these studios as to what your goals are, as to what you should be trying to do. Becomes much more complicated to get games greenlit. You're dealing with Xbox finance a lot and trying to figure out like why you're hearing different things depending who you ask. Remember at the beginning of this how I mentioned that Microsoft is this big complicated organization with a lot of different tentacles, a lot of people who have different goals and kind of their own like objectives that sometimes are in conflict with one another. That becomes even more pronounced at this point. You have, even within the Xbox org, you have a lot of political fights, a lot of people who are at odds with one another, who are not on the same page. It is messy. The last couple of years at Xbox have been quite messy. People
Last
start
couple years.
openly questioning Game Pass and talking about how it cannibalizes their sales. And my colleague Cecilia D'Anastasio at Bloomberg has reported on the huge numbers that are estimated, hundreds of millions that were estimated to have been lost on Call of Duty by putting that on Game Pass, because when you put a game on Game Pass, you are
Yeah, the Game Pass, the Call of Duty on Game Pass decision, I still think is kind of wild because it is very consumer friendly. But if you just took the biggest heavy hitter game that every year does very phenomenally well. That's a different conversation if it deserves that amount, but it does. It gets it. It very still gets a lot of interaction. A lot of people play it every year, and now you threw it on Game Pass for 10, $20 a month, $30 a month. Like, yeah, you're gonna take a very big financial hit, especially if you don't have anybody like that lack of space where that money was. Now you got nothing to cover for that money. Like, it's just lost unless you have something else coming in to fill that void. And didn't look like
Losing a
Xbox
lot
was
of
able to
money
do
as a
that.
result, even though you are like, again, like I said, different orgs.
Hence why Cottered Fair is going to be a full price game this year, and I'm very curious on how the sales will go for that
Have
game.
different within the organization, different groups have kind of competing goals, and so what might be really good for the Game Pass folks and for subscriptions there might not be so good for individual studios and the revenue brought in from individual games. By the way, just a little quick side note is that like the way the accounting works at Xbox is that you have if you're a game studio, you have your P&L, and the org actually attributes a certain amount within that P&L as like revenue, imagined revenue essentially, for what you for like the number of hours that people are playing your game on Game Pass. I believe they call it member weighted value is the term that they use. Microsoft has a lot of funny terms. Instead of profit margin, they call it accountability margin. And the big number there was 30%, as I've reported on Bloomberg with my colleague Dina Bass. And so on your P&L, on your profit and loss sheet, you might see a number that is like, hey, here's how much you would have made, or here's how much you're getting an attribution in revenue from being on Game Pass. And people question that number, I think, because it's all just kind of funny math. So it gets a little bit messy, and again, expectations are not 100% clear. A lot of people are just kind of unhappy with the situation. People have different beliefs throughout the org as to whether Game Pass really cannibalizes sales or not. I don't think there's kind of, you can't A/B test that sort of thing, so there isn't really evidence one way or another. But I think it's to me the eye test. I mean, I think it's pretty obvious to me that like if a game is on Game Pass and you could buy it or you could play it just by paying $10 for a couple of months, or you could spend $70 on it. That seems like a no brainer choice that you would just get Game Pass for a month or two.
It's tough with that conversation because I do believe Game Pass was very consumer friendly. Like even still right now on PC Game Pass being $16 a month, you still got an insane. Oh, that's Spotify. You still got an insane amount of games I could play right now for only $16 a month. I think like it's still one of the best. It's still a very good deal. But yeah, and I mean you're gonna get Gears of War E-Day. You're gonna get those big titles. You're gonna get those big temple titles. But like, come on now, like you still like it's not. Surely there's at least a couple games in here that definitely piques your interest. Who got replaced in there? That's a title that came out pretty recently. Yeah, we got Spyro coming with a new game next year. TCG Card Simulator is a fun game. Like, bro, they're like, look at all those titles. Like, it's still a great value, and that. But the problem is, yeah, a lot of that shit costs fucking a bunch of money. Do they have the amount of subscribers able to hold
Instead.
that?
But I mean, this is not, this is all estimates. This is all just people kind of conjecturing. So yeah, things are bad. And then at Dice of this year, I was talking to someone in management at an Xbox studio who was like, this is paraphrased, but who was like, man, there's so much uncertainty. We don't really know like how to do proper planning. As
Give me 5 seconds. I'll be right back. Okay, we're back.
Phil Spencer, I think he's a good leader. I think he has our backs. Roughly 1 week after that conversation, Phil Spencer was replaced by Asha Sharma, the new CEO who is currently running Xbox. And here we are. Asha Sharma has had a lot of time to go around, ask people questions. What she's done is really asked a lot of people for advice and their thoughts on the business. She's brought in new people, she's gotten rid of some people, and she is about to hit the reset button. She's used that word several times, reset. The full picture isn't yet clear, but it will be within the next few weeks. And one thing I want to end on is that might see pundits out there pointing out that a lot of Xbox studios, including the ones that are going to get hit in this current reorganization, have struggled to come up with hits. We've seen a lot of games from the Xbox org that have not been profitable. Games like South of Midnight and Keeper, the Hellblade games have never really been huge hits. Kiln, which came out earlier this year, has really not found a player base. And that's a problem. Don't get me wrong. And also, I think it's worth noting that like none of these games are like critically acclaimed masterpieces. None of them are 90+ Metacritic games that are winning Game of the Year or nominated for Game of the Year, or anything like that. But I think it's worth noting and hopefully having a little bit of empathy for these studios and the people who work there, because the messaging from above has just changed so much over the last 5 years. And games start development like 4 or 5 years before they actually come out. So when you start a project in 2020 or 2021 and that's under one mandate and suddenly that mandate changes 2 or 3 years later, but it's too late to change course, that can be a problem. And the messaging from above during a lot of this acquisition spending spree, when some of these projects started getting greenlit and started to enter development, the messaging was not you must hit X amount of profitability. The messaging was make good games, help us fill out Game Pass, try to win awards. Of course, don't lose money, break even. But like this is not a profit play. This is kind of Game Pass is the North Star. Don't get me wrong here. I mean, Xbox's studios, including the ones that are getting shut down, are made plenty of their own mistakes and all sorts of production problems, all sorts of cost problems. I mean, there were lots of mistakes made along the way that you could point to. That's my laundry. My laundry is ready. See, I don't cut this stuff out. I record my videos raw. So hope you got that. That's a little inside baseball into the way that I work. Anyway, so a lot of these studios, trust me, they made plenty of their own mistakes, but like in a lot of ways, they're being punished today for following orders, for listening to what they were told.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy because like they were told to be like, hey, just put creative stuff on there. We don't care about money. But now the mantra is now we only care about games that make us money. And that's where the disconnect is, and that's what we're seeing,
A few years ago. And that I think is just a shame. And what's happening is going to be pretty brutal. The word bloodbath has been thrown around among people that I talk to who know what's happening. It's going to be bad. So stay tuned. I'll be reporting more as I learn more on Bloomberg about who's being affected, how big the scope is. But those 3 studios that I mentioned are just the beginning. There's going to be more. There are a lot of negotiations going on right now. One more thing is that you might see headlines right now saying, hey, Xbox is shutting down X studio. And while that's kind of true, it's not entirely true because, again, all of these studio heads are in conversations, in negotiations with Xbox at the moment. In some cases, we might see studios spinning off. In some cases, we might see studios trying to find other buyers, like other publishers who might be interested in them. So it's not like nothing has been kind of executed just yet. That is going to happen in a few weeks. So again, the full picture is not entirely clear. We will see it happening soon. We will find out more in the next few days and weeks. A lot of uncertainty, a lot of turmoil. And man, it's just so hard to be an Xbox employee right now, to not know what's going on, to have to hear rumors on the internet that are like not entirely true or not secure, not like corroborated or confirmed, just people being like, oh, I heard this studio might be in trouble, which may very well turn out to be true, but is really, really bad to just be hearing, and really hard to make great games under those conditions. And by the way, if you're wondering, one of the reasons that Xbox has had such a struggle over the last decade making great games is because of a lot of this uncertainty. It's very hard to make great art when you were working under fear of layoffs and turbulence and shutdowns and cancellations.
does not sound very healthy.
Trying to make games under these conditions, that's not how you make good stuff. All right, we will find out more soon. And man, just yeah, I don't know what to say. It's gonna be.
Okay, I'll take it from here, Jason. Yeah, that was a very interesting conversation you had. I felt like a lot of the things, it just feels like just a fucked situation right now with Xbox. Like we don't really know where their heads at. We don't know if it's just going to be the studios Obsidian, Double Fine, and I keep forgetting the third one, Ninja Theory, not Obsidian, Compulsion, Double Fine, and Ninja Theory. Like who knows about games like studios like Obsidian? I know the Outer Worlds 2 didn't sell that well. I mean, they did have just a big banging year of games. They dropped like 3 games that year, last year with Avowed, and in hindsight, probably should have spaced those out a little bit more. You got, I mean, you got Everwild that got canceled, and we got Sea of Thieves, which in their last update, it's much more of a Forge mode, which is kind of just like more community creative things. So you're kind of wondering how much time left Rare is working on those games. I mean, all this is definitely speculation, but in the next month or so, the Xbox game plan is going to be interesting. Especially because he doesn't talk about this at all, but as we saw, Gears of War E-Day and Clockwork Revolution are going to be console exclusives for a console that is rising in price. So I don't really understand fully why. Like exclusives are important to the industry, but if no one has your console, why have like you got to get people in first and then build that ecosystem. Like if the consoles were like $300-400 right now, I totally understand console exclusivity. It would make perfect sense. But like we're still far a ways away from that for Xbox, where you don't even have it just kind of feels like you're catering too much towards what the other side is doing because PlayStation's going back to exclusivity. You got the core fan base on Twitter saying we want exclusives, even though they don't know shit about the game industry on the inner workings of it. Neither do I, so I don't know what I can say about that. But I don't know. I feel like let the professionals. It just feels like a scary time right now. I don't know. Like that's just my opinion on it, obviously. But yeah, that's just kind of where my mind's at with Xbox. It just feels like they're gambles on buying all these studios, investing into AI, console exclusivity. It just feels like that they're trying to trying to set up a business plan, but without having the people. Like you don't have the foundation right now. You don't have the core infrastructure of a fan base to really be pulling moves like this. Because in my opinion, I think I think that all of their games should be third party, right? Like they should be working kind of as a third party like third party publisher with making hardware. I mean that we see Steam kind of doing the opposite of that, which they're a storefront and making hardware on the side. That's where kind of Xbox kind of needs to be working right now. But that's just my 2 cents on it. I don't know if that's actually sustainable because then now you're competing with Steam. But I don't know. They kind of need to find their footing, and as prices get higher, they got to find it quick. Yeah, that's all I pretty much have to say about this. We'll probably have we'll talk more on this week's episode of the Lounge, which I believe we're recording on Thursday, so tomorrow. Me and Austin will go into that. Maybe even maybe if more news pops off before then. But yeah, this is I thought the Jason Schreier video was really good. Check out his channel for sure. Yeah, he's definitely a grown up in this industry that I feel like he knows what he's talking about, and I wish more people look more at these professional journalism, these professional journalists about this type of stuff, so that we can be much more informed. Yeah, if you like stuff like this, press that like, comment, subscribe button, and all that. Uh, Yeah, see y'all next time. See you in the next one, where I will probably be playing more Steam next Steam demos. Bye bye.